Another initiative that we've established in this conference are the Make in India Excellence Awards. Firstly, awarded to VJ Biosciences Private Limited for honoring pioneers in establishing advanced cell and gene therapy manufacturing in India. I invite representatives from VJ Biosciences to please collect the award. The second Make in India Excellence Award is awarded to the Shimadzu Corporation for pioneering India's first LCMS manufacturing facility. Awarded to India Pharma Hub in recognition of the launch of a groundbreaking B2B marketplace set to transform the biopharmaceutical landscape by simplifying search, connection and transactions, fostering innovation and collaboration in the industry. I request everyone to please pose for a group photograph. It is now my honor to invite our chief guest for the day, Dr. Rajesh Gokhale, Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, to address the gathering. Dr. Gokhale has been instrumental in shaping the biopharmaceutical ecosystem in India with innovative policies like the Bio-E3 policy, Biosecure Act, and many more, supporting budding researchers in the country in this sector. I invite Dr. Gokhale to address the gathering. I also request the dignitaries to take their seats on their tables.
Thank you, Dr. Rajneesh Jain, for inviting me here for this fantastic conference. It looks amazing with distinguished guests here. Professor Pandit for doing this fabulous work at ICT, bringing together new innovations, and the Patankar and others who have been involved in creating this ecosystem, actually of getting everybody together. From the government point of view, I thought I will give you a perspective of how government is trying to drive these innovations for the future of our country. And in fact, that's why the titles of my talk I have given is Building Next Gen Biologics. What I'm really keen to talk to you about today is, first of all, the technological landscape is changing at such a rapid pace that we are not even able to adjust to our own systems and be able to look at what things are going to happen. And I think that's why my first slide tells you that how global tech race over centuries have been one of the key aspects of shaping our society for better future. And if you really look at first industrial revolution came between about 1750 around 1800 century actually, and after that there are several revolutions that have come, but the space have been about 100 years or so in between each revolution that has transformed the society. So for example, it's the age of steam engine or railways, or the steel, electricity and heavy engineering which came around early of 19th century. And then the age of oil, automobile and mass production, actually you can see it in 1950s. So at least there is a gap of 50 years that's actually continuing to do this. However, since the ICT revolution, things have very, very dramatically changed, and actually a lot of things are happening at a very, very rapid pace. And I think you can look at the next 25 years is likely to be what I call industrialization of biology. It's going to be the key perspective of how new technologies and new events will reshape our lives. And I think this will change everything. Whatever we can imagine from our own life, whether it's food, water, agriculture, or pharmaceutical, or every aspect of our life will dramatically change. And sometimes I think it's very hard to imagine what will happen. And therefore in my next slide I've tried to put together a video, a TV show message. It was in 1943 actually, the movie clip was from this, and this gives you a perspective of what the world was 75 years back actually. So if you just listen to this.
More leisure as we got to work more to pay for all this stuff.
Exactly.
This is the future. Every home in New York City has electricity. They have refrigerators. Some even have electric stoves.
Now here's the thing. We buy all this stuff, we're not working for ourselves anymore, we're working for you.
So you can see this clip. Not too long ago, 75 years back, the refrigerators and washing machine and electricity was not thought to be a necessity actually. And I think we believe that the world changes so dramatically after every technological revolution that it's unimaginative to go back and think of what it will be. And it's even more harder to think of what the next 25 years will be actually. Because the next 25 years of biological revolution is going to absolutely miniaturize everything, change everything into a completely new perspective of using efficiency and effectiveness of what biological systems are all about, with obviously regenerative principles and sustainability practices that are unprecedented for its own kind. And that is why what I believe is that the biomanufacturing in a larger code, when not a very small now, in larger perspective, is going to be, will empower us to reimagine the future of all the world, entire world. You can see every country from a point of view is actually trying to look at 4 aspects of their own lives: agri-food industry, energy and chemicals, health and climate change. And these are the 4 non-strategic sectors where every country has to consolidate its position and be able to bring the best possible technological solutions in the fastest possible way and in the most efficient way how one can look at it. Now, why this is feasible in biology now these days actually, and there are 2 transformative things that have happened in about last couple of decades actually, and I think the speed with which things are growing, it's quite remarkable. One is the synthetic bioengineering. It's the ability to leverage living systems for efficient production of target compounds, materials, proteins, biologics. It's actually becoming unprecedented capacity and capability. Of course, with the digital world and the AI technology is actually making it more agentic, we will have a completely different revolutions that will actually imaginatively change the whole thing. And the second thing is really what I call precision biomentation. And the fermentation becomes a very restrictive word, and therefore I like to use the word biomentation, which really encompasses a lot of activities that will biological systems to look at in an intelligent bioprocessing that will all be mechanized in a way that will completely change the ecosystem. And I think that's why a large number of governments, in fact, are bringing together their best possible practices and policies and various aspects to be able to catalyze these activities. Now, Government of India, as was just talked about, as actually BioE3 policy was announced in the August year. Union government, chaired by Honorable Prime Minister, approved this policy. Now, this policy is about biotechnology for economy, environment, and employment. And it really touches the 3 aspects that are very critical components of entire perspective of what one needs to bring in. And I think 6 sectors have been identified which are likely to be making tremendous amount of exciting future opportunities. The first one being the bio-based chemicals and enzymes. The functional foods and smart protein is the second part of it actually. The third one, which is more emphatic and required for this today's conference, is the precision biotherapeutics. The fourth one is climate resilient agriculture, the carbon capture and utilization, and the futuristic marine and space research. And all of these 4-6 sectors together would actually really reshape the bioeconomic perspective of what Mr. Krishnan just referred to actually from a point of view of what country will look forward to in its future. If you really look at the biologics sector, I don't need to tell this distinguished audience what really is going to happen. But really the things that are what we are talking about are quite amazing. In really very short period of time, we are actually talking about something really, really spectacularly, things that are likely to happen. In fact, the COVID was such a game changer for new technologies that many of us, in fact, have, and in fact credit COVID for giving us opportunity to really test out our innovative models and our innovative systems. For example, you look at starting from adjuvant to really developing mRNA technology that was simmering around for such a long period of time. And Dr. Sanjay Singh is here, whose company has done this fantastic replicating mRNAs actually, which are really what we are all proud of. So you can imagine all these next generation therapeutics, cell and gene therapy, machine learning based biologics development, actually completely agentic methods in which the way biologics will emerge in much rapid way than what we imagine today actually. And I think combination therapies obviously will require again integration of digital data to be able to make sure that all this works out. So the strategy that Government of India has built through Department of Biotechnology is actually all these 6 missions will be implemented in 3 buckets actually. The first one is what we call Discovery and Integrated Research Network. The second one is Bridging the Gaps. And the third one is what we call Mulanpur Bioenabler Hubs, where biomanufacturing and biofoundries. So over the years, Department of Biotechnology through BioAct has in fact set up about 100 bioincubators all across the country. And we've got about 4,000 companies that are incubated along all these places. And many of them, the challenges that they face really is to take up to the next scale actually of activities, because they are tremendously exciting opportunities for these companies to scale up these activities in an unprecedented manner. And I think all these 3 programs in fact allows each one of you to come together, participate, and collectively, what I call collective intelligence actually, make sure that there is an impactful journey that our country has for the Viksit Bharat, for the future of the country. I think if you really look at the bioeconomic perspective, it's rather interesting to look at this table actually. And you see, the diversified economies like USA, China and India, in fact the bioeconomy share of the total economy of the country is in the smaller single digit actually. It's not even yet reached the double digit figures. Whereas European countries, in fact, which are smaller countries, already have a robust bioeconomic models available because large amount of their bioeconomy is contributed by that. And I think what that shows is that the countries like China, USA and India have tremendous amount of opportunity to even grow this bioeconomy into a completely unprecedented, unparalleled way. And we believe that this will probably be about 10% of, in next 2 decades, it will be about 10% of our total economy, what India is looking forward to actually. How do we do this? And you can see that the bioeconomy in India is growing at a very, very CAGR of a very rapid pace. It is $86 billion in 2020. In fact, it's just $10 billion in 2014 actually. And now it has reached $150 billion. And the world is thinking that the global bioeconomy will be around $4 trillion of economy actually. And India is expected to be about $300 billion. So how do we really catapult India's growing bioeconomy in the biomanufacturing and biotherapeutic sector is what all of you are really the people who are debate and bring together your expertise and your prowess and your exciting opportunities there as government is allowing you to actually afford and do these activities. So this is something that the country has done and we are all very proud of all the people who have done this. Actually you can see the first DNA vaccine came from India, actually published in Lancet, fantastic opportunity. Again, the mission COVID Suraksha was mentored and delivered by Department of Biotechnology. The nasal vaccine or the replication deficient chimpanzee adenovirus intranasal vaccine or the mRNA vaccine, protein subunit vaccine. Every single vaccine platform exists in this country, not only at the level of technological prowess, but even at the manufacturing level. And so you can imagine when Department of Biotechnology started in 1986 actually, and this was one of the ambition of department was to set up vaccine platform. In fact, one of the first vaccine that was developed in India using Shanta Biotech and others was really the vaccine that was developed by Dr. Khan, who was the secretary to DBT at that time, to be able to make sure that this happens. And since then, journey is absolutely stunning and unprecedented. And Serum is not even part of the slide here because they are the largest supplier of large number of vaccines in manufacturing here. So just to indicate that various platforms of absolutely unprecedented quality and unprecedented of imaginative, what I like to call imaginative prowess is actually present in our country. But this is just not to do with vaccine industry. I'll give you a few more examples of what has happened actually. This is a national biopharma mission program implemented by BIRAC, again under the Department of Biotechnology program. You can see in the last 5-6 years, about 70 products have been developed, 19 products are in the market. There are about 46 GCP compliant clinical trials and slides present. Several technologies and novel products have been developed and only about $15 billion was spent on this activity. The kind of innovation and the frugal innovation and the affordable innovation and the quality innovation that our country can do is primarily because of really amazing capabilities that we have built in this country and which actually gives us a lot of confidence to make sure that we will change the whole world. This is another wonderful example of what India can do actually. This is for an example of cell and gene therapy. The paper recently appeared in New England Journal of Medicine. And this is for hemophilia A patients actually. And this is a lentiviral based technology actually where the CD34 cells, hematopoietic cells have been taken, engineered and re-injected in people. And can you see the amount of, the amount of protein which was missing in these patients was actually, you can see, is quite amazing levels actually. And you can see there was absolutely no relapse case even after 2 years of follow-up of these patients actually. Quite unprecedented for the way the transgene technologies can really immensely make sure and create activities. Just to showcase that this is not one-off examples, there are a large number of programs in fact undergoing in cell and gene therapy which varies in different, which have all of them completed phase, is ready for the phase 1 clinical trial actually activities and therefore will completely change the innovation ecosystem to a level that is quite unprecedented. And then this is only ex vivo technologies, but there are several in vivo technologies of mRNA and various other delivery that can happen from our country's perspective. This is an example. I can see Jayanta in your audience actually. Again, you can see the speed and the power in which one can deliver this. This is a Nipah virus monoclonal antibody actually. And you know that there are kind of constantly Nipah virus keeps coming up for a very short period of time, thankfully in the few limited regions. And you can now directly use the survivor's blood to be able to identify neutralizing antibodies, and very quickly you can come up with a product development pipeline. And I'm sure Jayanta will bring this up product in the market in the next 6 to 8 months' time. I think this shows that we have every single capability exists in our scientific, in our industrial, in our perspective, which can really create completely new technologies that are very, very unprecedented nature of this kind. The only thing that what we need to do is, as I always say, that Bharat needs to have its own model. I don't think we can use a model that is actually used in various other countries, because our country has a unique demography, unique economic challenges, and geographical realities, including social sectors actually that one needs to protect. So therefore, to do this, how do we really bring about changes in the country's perspective? And I believe one of the key aspects is our institutions have to undergo, the academic institutions have to undergo dramatically changes. Pre-Amrit Kal, what we call the earlier part of this, all our institutions were in fact, genesis of them were for 3 different reasons. Pursuit of knowledge, creating infrastructure and capacity building. And I think in the 21st century, the demands from the academic institutions are changing quite dramatically. Now it's about, can it be the critical driver of societal progress, and can it be the catalyst of change for the entire country? And this is where I think there is tremendous amount of dramatic changes that we are trying to make sure from a government point of view, that the academic institutions, research institutions are being given and empowered to really do business-related activities and come up with the transformative power of S&T, defining bold actions for the future of our country. I think this is where Biotechnology Research Innovation Council has been formed. It's a single body that encompasses all the DBT institutions together and gives tremendous amount of positioning and power to synergize research and set global positioning such that the bold actions can be taken to define the transformative power of S&T technology. The key aspect for me, obviously, is how do we really play this game actually, and we cannot follow what I call Silicon Valley playbook or mass bio recipe actually. Those recipes are very different, very complex, and are heavy in investment that has to be put into the systems actually. For our country, we really need to bring in technologies into a bit of ingenious nature, which will provide us a very, very strong path for the future. If you really look at strong government support, DBT, BIRAC, CDSO is here, DST, CSIR, all the funding bodies are actually making sure that they align their resources and make sure that things happen at an unprecedented pace. We're also trying to make sure that the infrastructure gaps act as a catalyst to fuel ingenuity, rather than thinking that we don't have this, can we not do this, can we create exactly the way the models have been built everywhere actually. And one of the key aspects that government is talking and discussing about right now is building regulatory sandboxes where the controlled environment for innovative technologies can be tested under a relaxed regulatory environment for a short period of time, so that you can test them and then deploy them in a way which will actually make sure that these becomes an important cog in the wheel. So I think there is enormous opportunity in the country to be able to take up this activity. And I'll end with 2-3 slides of our Genome India program. Again, as I talked about precision biotherapeutics, it's going to be critical that how you utilize the genomics perspective from our country's perspective, from our country point of view of how various therapeutics can impact and develop. Now, this is a program that completed about genome sequence 10,000 individuals. The data is available for everybody to access, obviously in the restricted access mode in terms of you submit your proposal, what you want to do, and you get it. And all these samples have been deposited. Now you can see Indian population is a unique mix of various Indo-Dravidian, various other populations, Indo-European, Dravidian, Asiatic, Tibetan, Burman, and various other population perspective. When you try and map it out, you can see the principal component analysis really of 83 ethnic populations of 9856 individuals, which are healthy individuals. It gives you completely an amazing diversity of genetic diversity, right from 130 million genetic variants to about 5,700 genes that have at least one potentially deleterious variant which may lead to recessive diseases. And looking at risk allele frequencies for known Alzheimer's disease in different populations actually to understand how do they work, can quite dramatically change the way the ecosystem will work actually for the future of the country. Just to give you an example, and I'll end with this as example because there are specific stories that also one can talk about. Now this is a known fact that a population called Vyasa population has a mutation in BCHE gene, which actually gives them an individual goes into, when they go into surgery, the drug administered to them actually can lead to a completely life-threatening apnea, paralysis, and sometimes death. This is because of this butyrylcholinesterase, a hepatic enzyme that hydrolyzes succinylcholine, a muscle relaxant actually. If you go back and look at Genome India data, there are 44 individuals from about 29 Genome India populations carrying this mutation in a heterozygous way actually. And because of consanguineous marriages, you're likely to have homozygous, individuals emerging, and therefore one needs to understand these much more detail of how one that is known mutation only in this Vyasa population is in fact going to progress into other population activities, and therefore providing an amazing asset to the healthcare and adopting precision and preventing biotherapeutics. I actually leave you with final data center that what we are creating actually both which are already existing, where the primary repository data of all biological can be deposited in our country, and I think we should all practice this very, very well because it's important that as you build AI tools, you also have access to primary data so that you are able to catalyze these activities. And various AI, ML, LLM models are being developed right now, which can make bio-AI hubs as one of the future part of our activity. I'll leave you with what Honorable Prime Minister has to say about biotech ecosystem and what our country is looking forward to in last slide of mine. Thank you.
बायो इकोनॉमी के रूप में विकसित भारत की बुनियाद का अहम हिस्सा है। बायो इकोनॉमी का लक्ष्य होता है नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज का सही इस्तेमाल, बायो बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स और सर्विसेज का प्रमोशन और इस सेक्टर में रोजगार के नए मौके बनाना। बायो इकोनॉमी सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट को गति देती है, इनोवेशन को अवसर देती है। मुझे खुशी है कि बीते 10 वर्षों में देश की बायो इकोनॉमी तेजी से आगे बढ़ी है। साल 2014 में जो बायो इकोनॉमी $10 बिलियन की थी, वो आज $150 बिलियन से ज्यादा की हो गई है। भारत अपनी बायो इकोनॉमी को नई बुलंदी देने में भी जुटा है। कुछ समय पहले ही भारत ने बायो E3 पॉलिसी की शुरुआत की है। इस पॉलिसी का विजन ये है कि भारत आईटी रिवॉल्यूशन की तरह ग्लोबल बायोटेक लैंडस्केप में भी एक लीडर बनकर उभरे। इसमें आप सभी वैज्ञानिकों की बड़ी भूमिका है और इसके लिए मैं आपको अपनी शुभकामनाएं देता हूं।
We'll stop here, but we call DBT these days as delivering a better tomorrow. Thank you for being part of this.
Thank you, Dr. Gokhale, for an interesting perspective on the power of the biotechnology revolution and DBT's wonderful initiatives in taking it ahead. We are truly excited to what the future holds. We now take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude for our sponsors for their generous support. Revolution India, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Cytiva and Beckman Coulter Life Sciences, Merck, Sartorius Stedim, Biocon Biologics, VJ Biosciences Private Limited, Aragen, Premas Biotech, Concepo, Gujarat State Biotechnology Mission, and Bharat Serum and Vaccines Private Limited. Your sponsorship has made a significant impact on our ability to achieve our goal and host a successful event. I now invite Dr. Jain to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Anushka. Thank you, Dr. Gokhale, for a wonderful talk. And first of all, I would like to express our sincere gratitude for your time and coming over to the event and gracing this occasion. I also thank Professor Pandu is tremendously supporting all the initiative which we are doing and giving immense amount of support from Institute of Chemical Technology. I also thank our program chair and advisor, Dr. Naren Chirmule, Dr. Dhananjay Patankar, Dr. Mahesh Balgar, who's going to be there tomorrow, for helping us out to create this scientific program. I also thank all the speakers who are coming from different parts of the world and they are spending their valuable time in terms of this knowledge exchange platform. I also thank all the session moderators and chairs who is continuously working very hard for each of the scientific session to be done in a more precise manner. I also thank most of the sponsors, exhibitors who is financially supporting us to run this event and taking this event to the larger scale. I also thank event management team and the team of this hotel who is allowing us to do this particular event. I specifically thank the people behind the scene, my core event team, Preeti, Anushka, Jaydev, Vishakha Kurlawala. So they are working extremely hard to make this possible. And this is basically erected on a foundation of all our PhDs and master students of Nanomedicine Research Group who has made this possible. Thank you everyone and enjoy your next 2 days.
We now begin with an interesting fireside chat focused on fueling innovation, bringing risk capital to propel Indian startups to clinical success. I invite to the dais Dr. Prem Pagul, Dr. Gautam Nadik, and Dr. Rahul Singhvi.
Good morning, panelists. Good morning, audience. Now we are entering into the second phase. One of the requests which I have made, we have Rahul, Dr. Prem, Gautam, and Dr. Gokhale. All of them have achieved significant success in their career. As India is growing and taking a new shape in this coming decade, one of the major challenge which we are facing here is availability of a risk capital. So I'll just give you 1 minute of instance of what we are trying to achieve here. If you look into global successes of new medicine, whether they are gene therapies, cell therapies, new biologics, most of these new therapies have come from academic institutions. These academic institutions tie up probably closely with new startups, new companies, or sometimes even a larger company. Whether innovation is happening in academic institute or startup, majority of these innovations able to cross the death part of the innovation because they have critical availability of funds. Some of the geographies have done tremendously well in terms of providing that particular support when these startups critically needed. BIREC, DBT, most of our institutions have done tremendously well providing seed funding to most of our startups. But when it comes to a large amount of success or basically leapfrogging in the medicine, one has to really go beyond this particular issues. So a couple of questions, I basically begin with Dr. Rajesh Gokhale. Some of the things which, DBT and BIREC is doing, getting seed funding. But when it comes to, creating a fund from all the way starting of a startup to be created till its commercialization, whether BIREC has any policy or whether BIREC wish to introduce any policy, not only alone, but maybe in collaboration with major venture capitalists in terms of translation and creating more clinical stage biopharmaceutical companies.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me recuperate this. I think the government of India is absolutely excited about the future opportunities in the biopharma sector right now. And obviously this is primarily because of what our country has delivered during the COVID times. Every country used to think how India is going to handle its 1.4 billion people in terms of vaccinations, in terms of not just developing vaccinations, also implementing vaccinations. And what we did was diagnostics and vaccines of an unprecedented kind, which actually shows the maturity of our system. And I think that's where the capital infusion from government is already very much on the cards from all sectors. In fact, as some of you may be aware, in fact, BIRAC also has what is called a scheme called not just set up incubators, support early grant in aid system, but also co-funding. But we also have a fund-in-fund models actually as well. Whereas BIRAC actually provides an equity, take an equity from it and brings venture capital people together to bring in money, such that the government catalyst fund does help to bring together people and also align various resources in a way. So that's one aspect. However, that is still limited in a way. What government in last budget has announced, and I can tell you it's going to be launched very, very soon, is the amount of 1 lakh crore funding that is going to happen from the government actually, which is a kind of loan that is going to be for various technology sector. And I can tell you that biotech sector is biopharma, biotech is one of the key perspective in this. And you will see this getting implemented in very, very short period of time. I can almost tell you in the next couple of months you may see the rollout of all these activities. Which is exciting because this gives a large capital. And this is not for doing small things, this is for taking large challenges, disruptive challenges, breaking the barriers. Do we have capacity to take hundreds of crores and make some really impactful game? That's what the government is looking at. The government is looking at the entire value chain. Now I think the investors has to tell what else they want from the government. Because the government is willing to put in its own front end in the right in front of people and say, hey, look at this. We've created bioincubators, we've created startups. The startups are almost like more than 1.4 lakhs of startups right now exist. And the country is making more and more incubators of different kinds to be able to support these activities in entrepreneurship. We have fund of fund model. There are 1 lakh crore fund is going to be invested into the various technology sector. And I can guarantee you that biotech will get at least 10% of that fund. It is a substantial amount of funding from government, which is a long-term investment. And I think all the investment team, if get together, this is going to be transformative for the country. And as I said, 20 years, can we make it happen? This is the only chance we have actually to, be competitive in the next future of the world and what we call Viksit Bharat Yatra actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gokhale. I think so. Key point which he mentioned, this is the time. The time is now. And government is doing all possible, even last 2 to 3 years, Dr. Gokhale and his team is doing tremendous amount of work to bring in Bio-E3 policy and most of the biomanufacturing initiative which are right now there. That also, that government is doing their bit and definitely that is appreciated. But then the next question goes to Dr. Prem Pahur. Prem is managing partner of 8 Road Ventures and also a key investor to majority of the companies. We also in the audience have Mr. Nitin Deshmukh, who's also from Kotak Equity, ex-Kotak Equity, and have pretty much funded, most of these companies. So question comes to that, we have investor circle here and who is funding this. But again, most of this funding, which our assumption is, or maybe you could clarify this is more of the growth capital. This is not a risk capital. The question, which are 2 questions I'm asking Dr. Prem. One is, how does the investment landscape in India, biopharma sector, which is compared to global market, how do you differentiate? And the second thing, what lessons can be learned by the Indian biopharma startups specifically, or the MSME specifically, from their global counterparts? How do we change this?
Thank you, Ratnesh. First of all, thank you to you and Professor Pandit for having me here. ICT is my alma mater and they've been kind enough to overlook that I was an average student at ICT. Professor Pandit will tell you that. Also really privileged to be on the panel with serial entrepreneurs. Of course, we have Gautam and Rahul, but most people also perhaps know that Dr. Gokhale was a dynamic biotech entrepreneur before his current role, and I had the privilege of interacting with him many years ago when he started a couple of companies at a time when India did not have many biotech startups. So very nice to be on the panel with all of you, and great to see so many familiar faces from our partner companies, people who have been associated with them and have contributed to their growth over the last many years. So thank you and good to see you. So I think the short answer is it's all happening, Ratnesh. And maybe I'll give you a couple of examples. Even if I look at the partner companies that we funded over the last decade, and we have about 30 odd life sciences and healthcare investments now in India. We started with funding small molecule API manufacturers, then got into oral and injectable small molecule drugs. But then we've also moved up the manufacturing curve. We've funded fractionated biologics. We've looked at biosimilars. In fact, one of our companies here, Himanshu, is also in the audience, launched the first biosimilar for cetuximab globally, which is a great milestone for the country. But continuously manufactured biologics, cell therapies, and more recently bispecifics. So a lot of what Dr. Gokhale had in the slide, we've actually been able to put capital to work supporting that. I think a lot of factors are finally beginning to converge for India. If I take a pre-COVID view, we would be lucky if we saw maybe 3-4 biotech startups that would come to us for funding. Now at any time our team is evaluating at least half a dozen every month. So I think just in terms of a data point, in terms of what's happening, I think you're seeing a lot more supply. I think there are 4 or 5 factors that contribute to that. Number one, the quality of talent has clearly ramped up. We see that. We see more experienced teams. We see serial entrepreneurs. We see people who've been there and done that. So that's really good to see. Number two, I think there is state-of-the-art infrastructure to support these companies. The government has set up very high-quality incubation parks across the country with great equipment. There is very good development and manufacturing infrastructure available in the country today. You don't have to go outside the country. Number three, you're beginning to see success stories. All of the large pharma companies now have novel programs that are in the clinic, in clinical trials, so well past IND. I don't know if people are aware, but last year there was a US IPO of a company called Bicara Therapeutics, which is the first Indian origin drug discovery asset to be listed anywhere in the world, and it had a very, very successful IPO, traded well above $1 billion. So that was great to see. India has great technology talent, right? The number of STEM graduates in India is 4 times that of the US, and so as you begin to see the age of AI converging into biotech research, India is well poised to capitalize on that. And I think most importantly, as you think of the funding ecosystem, Ratnesh, I would say pre-COVID there was this big craze, and Rahul can also, I'm sure he will agree with me, there was this big craze in the US around platform companies and platform technologies and companies that had very early stage assets that were still getting a lot of funding and excitement from investors. I think that has now moved away. People are looking for hard assets, they're looking for assets in the clinic, and Indian companies are very well geared to do that. So for the first time there is both M&A interest in as well as pure interest in assets. So all of these factors are coming together, which is nice to see. So maybe I'll stop there, Ratnesh, and I can come back to, or do you want me to talk about the second question too?
I think it's well integrated at this moment.
Okay.
And we will take some of the other thoughts from the 2 panelists as well. Thank you, Prem. I think as he's saying that the process is happening and most of the venture capitalist firms are receiving quite a few proposals. But let's see how many. So one of the key benchmark, which as an audience we all are seeing that in next 2 to 3 years or 5 years, how many companies from the starting. So if you look into the story of ImmunoAct, which has started from academics and now in the clinical phase, that is story in fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe. We need, maybe 50s or hundreds of such examples. So that is a question, and that goes to, a question to Gautam, who is also trying to build MinBags on the novel vaccine front. And also one of the few who is racing against odds, So the question to you, Dr. Nade, is when you are scaling this venture, what strategies have you found effective in scaling specifically the startup, vaccine startup, from concept to commercialization? You are before commercialization, but definitely going towards that. And how critical is to getting excess of risk capital when Prem is saying it might be available. But I would like to hear from you how critical is access to risk capital in your scaling process?
Yeah, Ratnesh, first of all, thank you for inviting a startup which has zero revenue to the stage. This is really, there is a big difference between funding for revenue generating either profit or loss making companies versus those who take innovation plans on the drawing board to some sort of translational board and then through the regulatory system, and then figure out how to manufacture. It is an arduous task, and it's universally an arduous task, nothing very specific to India. We have, at least I have experience raising money, but it's never easy to raise money. And especially when you go to an investor, say this is a beautiful idea I have, and we actually have a very good idea. We have solid academic credentials. The co-founder is a very distinguished professor at the institute. Everything is peer-reviewed. It is an enormous struggle. And this is indeed the reality. It's being this way it's improving. I wouldn't say that, it is improving, and especially COVID did a lot to help things. The enabler has necessarily been government funding. Okay? Now, BIRAC has been there. For small ideas, there is something called a big grant, which starts off things, but big grant is big in name but small in volume. It needs to substantially increase for it to be meaningful. But on the other hand, there is a need to democratize how many people you need to support. So the number is sort of small. But you see, the challenges for startups all the way until commercialization, they are very, very different. And it is also difficult in the absence of a history of innovative products coming to market in India. One often looks at this, if you step back and see, what is impairing progress. There is money. There is also the time value of money. A lot of our work is regulated, and in the regulatory system, there are two aspects. One is people who come from academic labs, those of us who not come from the industry, work in biopharma, don't know anything about the regulatory system or how it is interpreted. I don't claim that the people who are there know it fully well too, because there are nuances in every aspect. But the moment you meet the regulatory system, the timelines are more or less indeterminate as to when you will get approvals. And that causes a little bit of alarm to even people like us who are advancing programs. It's a bigger problem for those who invest money in startups. So if you want Prem to put money, the first question is going to ask you is, how quickly will you get this approval? Will you get it at all? In the past, getting a phase 1 study in India was very, very hard. And it's not very easy even today. So there is also a quality of data that you will generate. So it's not just a question of money alone. If the overall infrastructure and the ecosystem is enabling, money will flow. I don't believe that there is a lack of money. There is no lack of intention. I think there is somewhere in between, there is an implementation problem and probably better understanding, at least from among the innovators, as to what it takes to satisfy some of the requirements of regulation. I would, in my opinion, this is, I think, a very important aspect. It's one thing to do work in the laboratory, another thing to do it in a regulatory compliant manner. Having said that, there is a lot of changes you can make to make the cost of product development very low in India. And one can align much with what's happening overseas. It's very important for an innovator to fail fast rather than spend a lot of money, develop a lot of manufacturing process, and then eventually find out that the program or the product fails in phase 1. So the sooner you get there, the better it is for everybody, and that is something regulation must help. And let me stop there.
Thank you. I think some of the key challenges Gautam indicated, very key problems a startup is facing on day in and day out. And one of the things I think which he critically mentioned, I think money is available. It's the system or it's the implementation. And this is how you go through a regulatory process and and get the product approved so the investor can have right access to the technology on time. Such challenges, so we also have Rahul Singhvi today, who's a serial entrepreneur and have, considerable amount of work isn't done in US. One of the key things, he's also able to tap some of the funds which otherwise, very difficult to tap, and have created multiple organizations in his career. So Rahul, my question to you is based on your global experience. You have worked in different organizations. You have also raised funds unprecedented amount of time and have deployed the funds as well. So as Gautam is saying that sometimes funds are available, deployment and going through those channels are not possible. So what is your advice and how do you would like to say this to Indian companies? What has been in your experience, which can be probably, we can take some of those abstract and can deploy in India and have a larger set of companies coming up in our country?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you also for inviting me here. It's a great pleasure and this esteemed panel. I think it's a contextual answer because there's no one single answer to this. I can even look at my own journey and say that when we built Resilience, it raised over $2 billion, which is almost 20,000 crores in a matter of 2 or 3 years. That's not a repeatable strategy because there was a particular time in history when that was possible. So the strategies that we used to raise that much money in the middle of the pandemic is not something that I can repeat even today, because that's a very contextual thing. What made us successful raising that kind of money was the ability to connect the dots and to be able to say that, look, there's a great need. There was a lot of awareness of supply chain issues, and to get people behind that and say like, okay, we are going to go after a very big solution for this. This is going to change the world. So the storytelling, connecting the dots, the ability to say that global macro trends or secular trends can be addressed by this initiative, and having the right people on the team that can support that was absolutely critical. But I want to be very honest with you folks that that's not a repeatable strategy, that you cannot do it again and again. But I think that if I were to look at some common principles in terms of what really works, is the credibility of the science and the team that matters most when it's possible to raise the money. Because raising money is a sort of a raw material. Right? Ultimately, you have to deliver something with it. So a team that has a track record of delivery, track record of execution, track record of success matters a lot. And again, that is hard to relate to because, many of you are first-time entrepreneurs, and so it's like, what about me? And I sympathize with that. But all I can say is that bring along people or partner with people or have advisors who have that track record, who can help you in that process. Because the other very important factor in raising money is that you need the passion of a founder. But the founder may bring a lot of energy and has enormous passion for what they're doing, but they may not have the execution capabilities. So bringing a partner who is excellent with execution, doing that work that has to be done on the ground is very important. And the person who's doing the work shouldn't be generally, if they come across as a threat to their job, that's a problem. So the ideal situation is that the CEO or the founder is there, they can do what they need to do, but they have somebody who can help them in a way where they are not threatened. Because then both of them can thrive. And that's the best thing for the investor. Because they want to see both. They want to see the founder's passion. Because the founder is working day and night. They don't care about anything. They're obsessed. And you need that obsession in success. And that's what the people who are putting the money in, especially in the early stage. when you don't have a P&L to show that you can get the returns. Under those circumstances, you're really going after the people and the obsession of the people and the ability to say like they have some team around them who have the ability to execute. Right? So those are some of the common factors that are important. Another thing is the ego of the founder has to be under check. They need to know what their limits are, because they will be moved. They should actually honestly tell the board or the people who are controlling the company that I've reached my limits. Somebody else should run the company. Those incredibly increases the trust with the people who will, more money will come. But if you try to hold on to that job because of your ego, it's a problem. So these are some of the nuanced things that people need to understand, is that you need to be humble, you need to be passionate, you need to be able to tell a credible story, and you need to be able to deliver. If you do those type of things at early stage, I mean, when you're in late stage, when you're doing private equity, then people will look at the numbers and all of that. Can I make my 30%, 40%, whatever IRR they need to make? But when you're in early stage, you don't have those numbers. So those are the things that you want.
Thank you, Rahul, and I think we will also look forward some of these learnings in your talk, which is coming in few minutes. With the interest of time, and that's what this conference is known for, we have to keep time on track. So we thank all the panelists. As Rahul is rightly saying, it's a culture. It's the end of the day, making collaborations, rightly asking for help from the right partner who could probably raise money. And that probably could help us to reach there where any founder who wants to be. So most of the founders in India are coming from science, not largely from business. And I think the connecting dot of the business and science is still missing, and I think that is something which you indicated. So with this thing, the panel is there in today first half. You will have ample opportunity to interact with them. So I'm very sorry, but I'll not be able to take any question to maintain time today. Thank you everyone for joining this panel today, and we'll continue with the next session. I invite Anushka to. So Anushka said we can take one question. We have option of one. Anybody wants to ask any question? No. Then I think we can take it ahead. Thank you very much.
I thank the esteemed panelists for their insights into this emerging sector. I now request Dr. Jain to present a small token of appreciation.
And so what are the kinds of challenges you need to go through to be able to create that confidence? That's something I'll talk about based on my own life journey. The second is how do you sort of create the capital, or how do you raise the capital? What does it take to get the fuel that you need to build the companies? And lastly, the courage to be able to take risk, to take the to go on those journeys that are fraught with risk. So what does it take, and why should you do that? Those are the three things I will be speaking to you about today. So we should start by first, setting the ambition. We are going to have to go on a limb and say, like, we want to be number one. Not a follower, but a leader in biomanufacturing. That is the first thing that we need to have the courage of our convictions that is what we want to be. Only then you will get there. Because if you're not even able to take that sort of ambition, it's not possible for you to get there. So that's the first thing, and that may be scary, but that's something that we need to accept as an ambition. So that's number one. Second is that there are whoever has gone there may have taken a path, but we don't have to follow that path. That is not necessarily the right answer, and a lot of countries follow the US. I've advised a number of different countries in terms of what they should do, and many of them make the mistake of just following the US blindly in terms of what they're doing. That is not the answer. What is important is what the summit looks like. What's the top of the mountain? But what path others have taken, you don't have to take that path. You have to work within your own constraints of resources, your people, whatever you have, to chart your own path. Not to say that we cannot get there. You still have to get there, but using your own path. So that is a fundamental thing that I want to put up there. That is important. And a great example very recently that you saw something like that happen is with DeepSeek, the AI model that came out of China, right? They didn't take a compromise on the best. They wanted to be the best, but they were able to get there with much less resource because they were creative in how they got there. That's the way to think about this. Frugal innovation doesn't mean that you are always at the bottom of the pyramid. Jugaad is not the answer. Jugaad is good, but it's not sustainable. It's not repeatable. It's not something that you can systematically use to drive to the top and scale. Jugaad is not scalable. So I understand that people in India have a lot of creativity, but it's not to stay at the bottom of the pyramid. You have to get all the way to the top. So how do you do that? So first of all, acknowledging the fact that we are already dealing with, and this has been talked about, that we have a history of doing well. So I want to acknowledge that India has already been there with generics and with vaccines, and they have done incredibly well. But that is, if you just sit there and say like, okay, we have already arrived. That's a bad thing. You have to up the bar, and by the way, for us to get all the way to the top, for example, this we talked about like cell and gene therapies, to be able to make cell therapy affordable. That's a great goal. Hasn't been achieved. Here it can be done. And to be able to get there, that would be raising the bar. So I think always, not being satisfied, that's a cultural thing, by the way. Not being satisfied. And I always bring up cricket. Because in cricket, like we won the World Cup and suddenly we are all right, we are there. And then you lose 3-0 to New Zealand. And why? I mean, this is a 1.4 billion people country. You're losing to a tiny country like New Zealand. You should be ashamed of that. So people have to think about like excellence in a very different way. Constantly upping the bar, not claiming victory before it arrives. That's a cultural thing. But again, I'm trying to say, okay, yeah, we've done well, but we have a long more ways to go if you want to succeed. So the first part of that is the confidence to lead. Because I've said the bold vision that we have is to become number one. So how do we have the confidence to lead? I'm going to say a few things about my own journey in terms of how I grew up in a small town in India, in Jaipur, as Naren said. For people, my friends who live in Mumbai, they think it's like a village. That's what they used to tell me, like they came out of a village. Probably true. But now I feel like I've seen a lot, and a lot of that has come from confidence, has come from experience. It's not something that you are born with. You have to learn. Now, I'll tell you a few things, both from my journey in school, as a professional, and also as an entrepreneur. What were those pivotal moments that were helpful for me? And there are a lot of words on this slide, so this is for for those of you for posterity. But what I'd like to emphasize is that there were pivotal moments in my life, but there was one common thread in all of those moments, all of the 3 phases of my life, and that was failure. In the first one, when I was a student at MIT, after 4 years, I had nothing to show for. I used to go to my advisor who had no time for me. He was a great man, had too much work going on, 30 students, a lot of postdocs. I had to take appointment to see him. And after 4 years, I went to him and told him what I had. He said, like, young man, you have nothing. You're trying to get blood out of the stone. Can you imagine, after 4 years of trying to work in there, failed experiments, spooked several times, and having nothing to show for. That's a hard situation, and that's a challenge in which you're going to the lab every time, not knowing what to do, and that seeing yourself in the abyss, and then figuring it out is what true education is. It's not the problem we solved, but the paper in Science that we published after the PhD was done. That's nice. But the real education that was durable, that helped throughout the career, was this ability to see the abyss, to know that there's light at the end of the dark tunnel, and to have the courage to be able to figure it out. Doing it over and over again. That's the real learning. So that was the first sort of inflection point for me. The second, when I was at Novavax as CEO, I had to kind of almost had a lobotomy, right? Because I had always been taught that you have to be the smartest one, you have to be the number one, and because that's what's been reinforced in school all the time. You're like raising your hand and answering the question, and that always gets rewarded. You're number one, you get the more marks, all of that. That is not how it works in the real world. Especially when you have to lead an organization, and you have to almost be at the back. So it's 180 degrees from what has been sort of taught to you in school, and what has been reinforced over and over again. It's what success means. But when you're in an organization, you're trying to use the full potential of the people around you, because you need all of them. You have to stay quiet. And that's hard to do. So this was a very hard lesson, to almost shrink your ego to zero. And I had to go through tremendous adversity, by the way, both personal and professional, during this period when I was at Novavax. And that was almost the reason for me to be reborn as a person that had to be incredibly humble. So that was important, because the more you know, the less you talk. And last but not the least, when I was at Resilience, great privilege to be offered that chance to build an incredible great company. The main lesson there for me again was that there were sort of you're again trying to climb a mountain where there's no path. So you have to chart the path every single day. And many times you do come to a dead end, and to know when to pivot and to absorb that failure in your process of moving forward, to have enough optionality in your strategy to be able to survive those failures and continue to move forward. That is very, very important. Yes, it was great to raise $2.5 billion. Yeah, that's an enormous amount of money. But to be able to create from nothing, from the day I was asked to do this, there was a blank sheet of paper, there was no bank account, there was no person in the company, there was no debt, there was nothing. All they told me was that we have a shit show going on in the US right now. We can't even buy masks. I mean, it's so bad. This globalization has gone too far. We have to bring back manufacturing so we can at least make basic stuff for our people. We need to do this now. And that's all there was. And 4 years later, we had 6 or 7 GMP facilities, 1,700 families that were feeding. Our payroll was over $300 million. And we were obviously, making several $100 million in revenue. And this company is going to become probably the most important CDMO in the United States, probably the most important pure play CDMO in the United States. Fingers crossed. But those are the kinds of things. But it was all, there was a lot of failure involved in these things. That is what ultimately led to the ability to do more. So it's possible to do the impossible. There are a few things that I will just point out in terms of how to create that confidence. One is that you have to believe it to see it. In other words, like a lot of people will tell you, like, I believe it when I see it, right? Any idiot can say that. That's not the point. The point is you have to have the ability to imagine something so vividly, so believe it so that you can start seeing it already. when it's not even there. That is what true vision is. That's the point one. Second is that you have to have a culture that is built on humility. I'm not good enough yet. I have a long ways to go. Don't claim victory. There's a lot more excellence that has to happen. And to be not a stigma. It's okay to fail. And that is very, very important for a culture like India, because here you lose your job or you get fired or you have a big failure in your company and people will look down upon you. That is complete nonsense. That is ridiculous, and we need to get out of that mode now. So that is the other part of our culture. Strategy is all about optionality. It's like you are going to have to address inevitably, if you're trying to do something great, failure. So how do you create optionality so you survive? It sounds pretty obvious, but most people don't think like that. And last but not least, vision is great, but if you don't execute, it's useless. So execution is very important too, which is where the customer obsessiveness comes, which is the details come in, and again, having the right team to do that. Those are some of the main points I wanted to give you from that part of my journey so far. Now, looking at India, and again, this is a part that, some of it may be a repetition from what you already may have heard, but this is based on first principle. This is what I have figured out myself. What are great things about India? Like, how can India become that great country? Knowing, stepping on some of the great strengths that India has. India has great talent. I've been going around looking at some of the companies in India, and I'm incredibly optimistic that India has great talent. India has talent in the 20s and 30s. People are not necessarily thinking about leaving this country. They are quite sanguine living here, as long as they have inspirational leadership. That's great news. Knowledge is almost democratized. You can learn pretty much anything on YouTube today. So there's no asymmetry in knowledge. Almost everybody has all the tools here. They may not have as much excessive tools, but they all have tools. So they have the tools. So the talent, I think, is a great positive. India does have decent cost structure. It still costs less here, maybe 3 to 4 times less. So that's a great thing. I mean, UPI, digitally native, much more interesting than I find in other countries where you can, anybody can pay with a QR code. That's an incredible thing. Yeah, so the digitally native part is all positive. But what are the gaps that we have to bridge? I still don't see, at least in our sector, in biopharma, biotech, the risk, capital, and investment in innovation. That is a gap. And I think that what has been said by Dr. Gokhale here is really very positive, because I didn't know that there's public investment that is going to go into that. And that's a really excellent thing. Public investment not only in actually building companies, but also in general infrastructure. It's not a really good thing that you have to take 3 hours to go from the airport to your lab in Bangalore. That's a bad thing, and we need to fix it. And so those are other things that we have to figure out. Why Wuxi is such a great company in China is because in Wuxi city you can basically get anything within 1 hour. One of the reasons why they never disappoint their customers in the speed aspect.